And the Growell Popup is like a pop-up by Edible Gardens. It's a 3-month project where we experiment and try to raise awareness about growing our own food to locals and also people who are in Singapore or people who transit through Singapore as well. I guess the model of our social enterprise is slightly different in that we don't try to just build gardens for people and try to survive day to day. We try to share awareness on how to grow your own food, not just for Singaporeans, but really for everyone, to teach people how to grow their own food. Then the line blurs, when we just talk about growing your own food in gardens and growing your own food for farms. Because in Singapore, when we talk about urban spaces, Singapore is a city, it's an island, it's a country, state. What is it really? And I guess gardening could be farming, farming could be gardening in a place like Singapore. And statistics-wise, for the uninitiated, we import about 91% plus of our food. So most of the food you eat, especially the meats, even vegetables, dairy products, are from overseas. And our strategy in securing food is by negotiating power. So if we have more money, we have the economic power to negotiate for our own food. But I guess that definitely is not a sustainable way to go, right? And many Singaporeans don't really care about what they eat or where the food comes from. Well, we are concerned about day-to-day living, but we do see like how the bigger picture is linked to us and the food, for example. Maybe we'll start thinking more about where our food comes from, because all our money is going to negotiating for food overseas. So we are buying land in China to build pig farms so we can have pork in Singapore. Air-flown fresh pork, frozen from China, in spite of health risks, health scares and what's not. Vegetable from Malaysia, and recently there was the floods, right? There were the floods, so the prices went up, and it was passed down to consumers. So again, we suffered the brunt of it. And we get chickens from Malaysia as well, and they are slaughtered in Singapore to reduce the risk of contamination and what's not. And so and also rice in Thailand, right? So recently the prices went up. Not so recent, but that goes to show that we are vulnerable to other countries and the political situations and also the environmental situations in other countries. Neighboring countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, and I think that's at the heart of what we try to do as farmers. We're not looking at the big picture per se, but we bear the big picture in mind, right? Climate change and what's not, doomsday, and all that kind of stuff. But on a day-to-day level, my colleagues and I, before I got into managing the pop-up, I was just like them. We were going from rooftops to rooftops, farms to farms, just plowing the land, building gardens for people, teaching them how to maintain their own gardens, and just something simple like that. If we see it happen on a large scale, let's say in Singapore or in a community or a neighborhood, it could do a lot more to kind of feed ourselves. In the area of vegetables, fruits, and herb supply, for example, we wanted to branch it out into farm-to-table concept, farm-to-produce, and show people the range of possibilities, what they can do from the moment they plant a seed to the moment they harvest something, and to the point where they cook something and have that food. And so we work with all kinds of people from the ZDAY organizers, to party people, to chefs, to housewives, all kinds of people, including the people in the neighborhood here, to kind of do collaborations to see what kind of angles we can showcase, to make things relevant to them, to help them see that it's not so hard to grow their own food, just to have them think about where their food really comes from, and where their food really comes from just kind of intersects with a lot of ideas such as food culture, traditions, especially in the Asian context. I think that's pretty much Growell and Edible Gardens in a nutshell. So we've, I think, been operating for like a month already for Growell, and we actually started from very little. We started from virtually nothing.
Yeah.
And that's why the model for the pop-up, which typically will be a marketing vehicle that will have funds channeled from the parent company, we kind of open up the model to have the community build up this place. So all we had was this place, and it was run down, the roofs were leaking, and it still leaks. Fire hydrants just popped out of the wall, and so we invited the community in. And who are the community? Maybe people around us first. So I invited my friends, my colleagues, to start building this place up. And I happened to meet this photographer. So if I would just branch into a small story, this set of photographs, We Are Farmers exhibition, is by a photojournalist called Hui Ying. And I felt that her story at the exhibition is significant in that she comes from a generation of farmers, which is very rare in Singapore. I don't know anyone who actually has farmer parents, for example. And her family were pig farmers. Her grandparents were pig farmers. Until the point where the government shut down all pig farms and said, okay, we need to shut down pig farms and move on with life, start to industrialize, commercialize and what's not. And so her family decided to remain in farming, but open Singapore's first hydroponics farm, vegetable farm. So hydroponics is a way of growing mainly plants, I would say, through water supply. So we channel water supply in a closed system, and we can monitor nutrient levels, and we can feed nutrients into the water supply and generate plants from there. So it's a closed loop system. And so Hui Ying's family were the first, and they're still operating even till now. Even though for the third generation, most of them have stopped becoming farmers. And Hui Ying herself, she branched into the arts. I think she's been doing everything other than like taking photos of farms all her life. And this is the first time she actually did an exhibition on her own family, and about not just her family but Singapore's agricultural history. And when I chanced upon it, I invited her to have her works here, because I shared with her what we're trying to do, all these farm to table stuff, and raising awareness about where people's foods come from. And she liked it, and we told her we don't have money to pay you to have your works here. We can't really do anything for you but offer you brick walls. And she was very open, and I think that kind of kick-started how we just started growing. And we had people like Kiet is downstairs, I don't know what he's doing. But he started growing mushrooms, like oyster mushrooms. But of course for other mushroom stuff you can ask him later on. And he's an artist himself who works with plants. And he invited like the Jungle people and a lot of musician, artist types to just build up the space with art. So if you see the space, it's kind of filled with art. It's also because it's like a 60 degrees of connection. We bring friends, we become friends with friends of friends, and I think slowly they kind of understand the idea of what this space is. And to a certain extent, they understand it, and they do appreciate and take home that idea with them as well. So to cut the long story short, it's virtually really from scratch, with some funding and capital, by holding workshops and events such as teaching people how to farm. So in the morning we have urban farm schools, we teach people how to farm and build gardens at home or in lots of land. That's how we earn money, by raising awareness and sharing our knowledge. And for the main company, we actually have a series of farms, rooftop spaces in town, Wheelock Place, National Design Centre, Singapore Management University. We harvest these herbs and vegetables, even the ones downstairs, we sell them to restaurants, and that's how we generate some revenue. We build gardens for people as well, so residential projects in restaurants. So you've gone to some restaurants like Artichokes and Sculpture Square, you've seen like the edible gardens shop on their garden. We help to build their garden. The team strongly believes in soil farming and this design principle called permaculture, which is really sustainable design, right? It's about trying to mimic the natural environment and have that replicated in an urban setting. Of course adjusted to the urban setting such that we need not water our gardens all the time, for example, and not because we're lazy whatsoever. But when we look at forests, for example, does it have to rain every day, right, for forests to thrive? No. And we try to do that in our gardens such that when we have a food forest, it could just be left just like that. We'll water it for maybe 1 week and it'll just be like that. We don't have to water, we don't have to feed it fertilizer every day. A whole ecosystem is created from just having a food forest, and we can just go in and harvest as and when we like. So if you're talking about education and working with the government, I mean, on one hand I would say, yeah, we've been working with them constantly, and on the other hand I would say that it's been tough working with the government because as much as we would like to push things forward, and sometimes working with the government is really one way to drive things forward in Singapore. It's not easy because a lot of the laws are not adapted for urban farming and things related to food security. So outside the problem of Growell really. So since day one, like 1 month ago, since we started officially, I will openly say that I would think urban farming is illegal because you need to grow things in land designated for agriculture, and we're totally not in that kind of zone, right? As you can tell, we're still India. No alcohol zone, so that makes things a bit difficult for people who have served food, have restaurants. So for people who love food and want to do food events here, it's not easy in that sense. And since we're not in that zone, people who farm in these kind of zones need licenses to sell their produce. So of course we don't have that license, right? And we're obviously selling produce to restaurants from the stuff we grow downstairs. We also need an additional license to wash our produce. So we can't even qualify for that particular license because we are not even farming in a zone for agriculture. So urban farming is kind of illegal, right? For all the talk about, Singaporeans need to farm, we need to think of our future, but the laws are not adequate, and I guess in a way urban farmers are not legit in that sense. We are all about the community, and we've tried to do things such as invite the community, this immediate community, to participate in what we do. In a sense, like government agencies are getting in our way in trying, in whatever we're trying to do, because urban farming is not just about growing plants and sticking your hands in the soil, but it's also about building a community through simple action of farming and harvesting food and preparing food together, right? So in that sense, whatever we're trying to do in this space is an extension of what food security is, or what urban farming is from a ground level perspective. Yeah, I've been trying to get one of my colleagues to teach people how to be beekeepers and keep hives at home. And for those who are shocked, yeah, we are urban farmers, but we also beekeepers. I forgot to tell you that. And we're also working with other beekeepers to do honey tasting sessions and how do you make your own meat. And that will happen next week, and there'll be a free talk on Friday. I think it's next Friday, 7:30 on beekeeping in Singapore. So again, the same pattern applies with beekeeping, right? It's a lot about raising awareness and also trying to push boundaries, in the sense that there's a lot of red tape and pest control, or maybe AVA, things of bees as pests, and I'm sure a lot of Singaporeans will still not be comfortable with the idea of having bees living alongside them. My neighbor having a hive, it's going to kill all of us, we're going to die. If you agitate them, maybe if you stung more than 1,000 times or something like that. But I think that the issue is that, it's really about raising awareness and countering mindsets, as well as the laws, to have them understand that yes, bees sting, but they won't kill you. They are not menace or pests in a sense. I won't say they are friends. That sounds overly friendly, right? But they do a lot to pollinate our urban city, and in fact, honey from urban cities tastes much more richer and better than honey from the rural areas because of monoculture. They can only forage in one particular area, only one type of flower, and the honey kind of lacks depth. Whereas in the city, there's a huge diversity of plants, flowers, and they can forage within 5 km. And there's so much flowers they can, go to get, our own farms, gardens in National Design Centres, basil flowers, some rosemary maybe, then there's bougainvillea all around, and so on and so forth, jasmine, whatsoever. So some of the other things we do in raise awareness is a bit far-fetched, but it does make sense. And one of that topic which is close to our hearts, not just the farmers' hearts, but chefs, F&B outlets, and anyone who generates food, is of course the idea of food waste. And for farmers, not so much for urban cities really, or people who grow herbs. The idea of food waste is prevalent when you want to grow so much, and you have to reject the ugly stuff, things which are still good but have been tainted by bugs, for example, for supermarkets and what's not. So Hui Ying's farm, for example, has food waste, and they cannot calculate how much food waste is generated every day, because we talk about tomato having rot, and you cannot really predict when tomatoes are going to rot or when tomatoes are going to look ugly, for example. And I think that could be an issue that farmers face. I'll just talk about farmers and the vegetable farmers per se. And we talk about hotels such as MBS. They had a lot of food waste generated, and they kind of countered that problem. I don't really know whether they countered it or it's just a PR spin. But they apparently bought a food waste machine that turns all food waste into water. Yeah. And I think to try to raise awareness in our small, humble way, we are having a food waste competition, cooking competition next week, where we'll have like people who can't cook food waste, and the worst tasting dish will win. So it's like Iron Man style, 10 people crowd in our small kitchen, guest judges, and participants, people who come and watch the competition can pay $10 to have food waste buffet. Food waste isn't like smelly stuff, flies all around, maggots growing in your egg shells and what's not. It is about ugly looking plants. It is about meat trimmings which people don't want because they just want like the prime rib and whatsoever. But my assumption is that generally when I talk to people, especially again the Singaporeans, food waste, then no way am I going to pay $10 for a food waste punch bowl, because yeah, we're serving food and drinks using food waste. And I guess for myself, it took a while to understand what food waste meant until I talked to the people from the food bank, where all they're trying to do is take food waste, so things which are going to be expired, which are still okay to eat, and channel that to other places such as I'm not too sure what kind of institutions, but people who would use the food waste, for example, the food that's not spoiled. And they were giving out like frozen salmon fish. They had been in the freezer for 1 year. And it's still good to eat, and they have a shelf life of about 4 more years. So that's food waste again. So I think we're all trying to understand what food waste is and try to change notions. I'm coming from a background of having grown up in the education system where I was taught, the only thing I was taught maybe about waste, not just food waste, is to reduce, reuse and recycle, and nothing beyond that. And to not throw litter on the floor. But for what reason, I don't know why. And it's only until I got into farming I learned about permaculture, where it's okay to throw banana skin on the floor because it'll decompose and be part of the ecosystem. So if no one's looking out, throw like banana peels like on the roadside at home. But again, it's your choice. But I do understand what I'm doing. I'm doing it consciously, not randomly throwing litter for the sake of trying to rebel against the system in my very small way. Yeah. But on the topic of foraging, I personally started the foraging project in Edible Gardens. I guess foraging for me, it started off as a buzzword in the West, right? And when we talk about like famous restaurants in Denmark and the Nordic countries, oh yeah, we're foraging and we're using what we forage in the forest in our food. And we're charging people like $300 to pay for a dish of fresh wild berries, the kind of stuff. Or wild ants, that taste like lemon. I was like, why not? No, but I guess you can tell that the fact that I'm participating in this talk means that the thought process has evolved a lot along the way. And I spent a bit of time in South America where I was just living by the Pacific Ocean. Spent some time traveling in the Amazon, going to the Andes, talking to the farmers, staying in the forest, just finding out about all this diversity, and it just blew my mind. And when I came back, I was like, okay, I'm in concrete jungle again. Okay, I need to do something about it. And I thought, you know, why not start from Singapore? I mean, maybe we aren't just a concrete jungle, and maybe there's so much more that I personally do not know. I wouldn't claim to say I'm a forager whatsoever, no truffles, no nothing. But for me, foraging in Singapore is all about discovering forgotten plants and edible weeds, which especially the Malays and the Chinese, my grandfathers and my great-grandfathers would know about, because they used to stay in the kampong villages, and they would just go out to the forest to harvest not so much berries. We don't really have berries in Singapore. Mushrooms are typically toxic in Singapore as well, so no mushrooms. But herbs, plants, not so much weeds, that are of medicinal value. And that's where that was the kind of medicine that persisted during that time. Traditional Chinese medicine, using medicine, plants taken just from outside, within 1 km from your house, as opposed to the pills we are used to having right now. So I brought them around places like Mustafa, and I pointed out to a patch of grass by the roadside, okay, this is wood sorrel. And I was like, this much. To eat it also, because when we talk about urban foraging, there's a lot of health risks involved, right? Like, do you really want to eat polluted weeds? Really? In your food? Really? Is it healthy? Or am I just doing it because it's trendy or it's a buzzword or whatsoever? But the truth is, the way I see it, all these edible weeds and forgotten plants that I've learned from just talking to the older people and the older farmers who are out in the community gardens in Singapore, in Jurong, in Clementi and what's not. I've learned to identify them. I realized that they still grow in small concrete spaces. Wherever there are holes and soil, they will grow up, because they are native to this place, right, in Singapore. They may have been brought in by people a long time ago, like thousands of years ago, but they are localized already, and they still are present, and we have probably forgotten about it in favor of like quinoa, for example, lettuces, and perhaps these edible weeds and forgotten plants have much more nutritional value and are more relevant for us than all these vegetables which are imported overseas. And I'm not just out to say, you know, you should be a local boy and what's not. I'm just trying to raise awareness about what we have in our landscape, and that we should learn about it and be proud of it. And I think that could define what Singaporean cuisine could mean, or the diversity of our landscape, really. My main point really is to just raise awareness so that you can identify your own plant, whether you're in the wild or not in the wild, whether you're growing plants at home or not. You can identify and you can grow your own thing, really. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for having this conversation. I hope you appreciate a bit more about food security and the idea of sustainability and what we're doing in Singapore. Thank you.
Thank you.